Hello everyone. Let me ask you a simple question. Have you ever gone to the supermarket with the same amount of money but end up buying fewer items than before? So that is exactly what Malaysians experienced in 2022. News reports were filled with complaints about rising groceries prices, especially shortage of chicken and cooking oil, something like that. So as a result, many families struggle to afford the daily necessities. So, what what is exactly is inflation? So, in simple terms, inflation is the increase in the general prices of goods and services over time. This means that the purchasing power of money is decreased. In other words, the same amount of money can buy fewer goods than it could before. Now, let's look at some key facts. According to the Department of Statistic Malaysia or DOSM, Malaysia's overall inflation rate in 2022 was 3.3%. Well, this number may not seem very high, but the biggest concern was the food and beverage sectors, where inflation reached like 5.8%. This is important because food is something everyone needs every day. When food prices rise much faster than overall inflation, people feel the impact immediately. Many households had to spend more on basic necessities, leaving less money for other expenses, something like that. But this raises an important question. Why did prices suddenly increase so much in 2022? So the answer that I would like to hand over to Aslizan, who will explain the main causes behind Malaysia's inflation. Thank you so much.
Next, we are moving to cost of inflation in Malaysia 2022. There are three main reasons why inflation in Malaysia increased significantly in 2022. The first cause was the post-pandemic economic recovery. After COVID-19, restrictions were lifted. Many countries reopened their economy at almost the same time. As a result, consumer demand increased rapidly because people start traveling, shopping and spending again. However, factories and global shipping network were still recovering and could not meet this sudden demand. This created supply shortage and increased production and transportation costs, which is eventually led to higher price for consumer. The third cause was import inflation. In 2022, the US Federal Reserve raised interest rates several times to control inflation in the United States. This threatened the US dollar, while the Malaysia ringgit weakened in comparison. Since Malaysia import many raw materials and products from overseas, business had to pay higher import costs. These additional costs were eventually passed on to consumers through higher price.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad Aishawi bin Nasir and my matric number is 311883. So today, I'm going to talk about the effect of inflation in Malaysia during 2022. To begin with, we all know the feeling of going to the supermarket with 50 ringgit and coming out with a basket that feels much lighter than it used to be. So, based on the slide, the most significant impact we can see here is the decreasing of purchasing power, particularly in 2022. If you look at the table in the slide, which highlight the purchasing power index in Malaysia, we can notice how the food and beverage subgroup dropped sharply from 75.1 in 2019 to 69.0 in 2022. So, what does this mean in reality? It means that throughout 2022, the exact same amount of money bought us significantly fewer groceries than it did in previous years. The core issue is that wage growth in 2022 simply could not keep up with this rapid price increase. This placed a massive burden on consumers, especially the B40 and lower income groups. They were forced to make tough choice, either dipping into their hard-earned savings or cutting back on essential goods just to put the food on the table. But inflation doesn't just hurt the buyers, it heavily impacts the seller as well. So let's move on to the next slide. Businesses, especially in the food and beverage sectors, are facing a massive surge in operating costs. The prices of raw materials like cooking oil, meat, and vegetables have increased by up to 40%. This puts business owners in major dilemma. If they raise their prices to match the cost, they risk losing their customers. So, what is the alternative? As shown in the image, many businesses resort to a phenomenon called shrinkflation, which is the reduction in the size or weight of retail products, especially of packaged foods with no corresponding reduction in the retail price. So, instead of raising the price from 12 ringgit, they keep the price the same but reduce the portion size or product volume. Ultimately, to sustain their business survival, owners are forced to constantly revamp their menus and pricing strategies. Finally, it is important to understand that inflation does not hit everyone equally. There is a clear demographic imbalance, with urban areas feeling the pressure much more intensely than rural areas. If we look at the 2022 data, in this bar chart, Malaysia national inflation average was 3.3%. However, major urbans hubs blew past that average. Look at Putrajaya at 7.3%, the highest in the country. It is driven by the high cost of services and lifestyle in the administrative capital. Selangor also sits well above the average at 4.2% due to its high population density and demand. This data clearly proves that the burn of inflation is felt far more severely by city dwellers. So, what's next for Malaysian inflation outlook? To explain the next part, I will pass the floor to my friends.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad Wais Haziq bin Muhammad Suhaimi. My matric number is 310397. So, today I'm going to be talking about the control measures and the conclusion for inflation in Malaysia in 2022. So, first and foremost, I'm going to be talking about the control measures for inflation in Malaysia 2022. So, first we have strategic subsidy allocations. To shield the public from soaring global energy costs, the government maintained heavy blanket subsidies on essential goods, particularly for RON95 fuel, commercial diesel, and polybag cooking oil. Second, we have the implementation of ceiling prices. Temporary maximum price caps were enforced to protect consumers from severe food inflation. This ensured that basic staples, specifically standard chicken and eggs, remain affordable and accessible in the domestic market. Now we have the monetary policy actions by Bank Negara Malaysia. Adjusting the overnight policy rate OPR, Bank Negara Malaysia utilized monetary tools to curb inflationary pressures by gradually normalizing the national interest rate. The 2002 OPR timeline, starting from a historic pandemic low of 1.75%, the OPR was increased incrementally over 4 consecutive adjustments, reaching 2.75% by December 2022. Third, we have the economic objective. This monetary tightening was designed to absorb excess liquidity in the market, encourage saving over spending, and safely cool down excessive domestic demand. So, for the conclusion, first and foremost, we have understanding Malaysia's inflation. The 2002 inflation wave was primarily driven by cost push inflation, meaning prices rose due to the external global supply chain shocks and geopolitical crisis rather than internal economic failures. Second is the impact of intervention. The combination of aggressive fiscal subsidies and targeted monetary policies successfully presented an extreme cost of living crisis.
And third is the global benchmarking in 2022. Malaysia's strategy kept the inflation rate highly manageable compared to the rest of the world. As you can see, Malaysia is 3.3%, Thailand is 6.1%, and the United States is 8.0%. Okay, that's all from me. Thank you.